This is called a strengthening our mind, not to surrender our mind to our emotion or our hidden anger or any other kind of human weaknesses. Now this is real or practical meditation, if you can develop, very useful for your day-to-day life, for your married life, not only for your religious way of life. Then, I think you have heard this story, the advice given by the Buddha to a man who had been meditating for a long period, developed his mind, but he had only one problem. His name was Bahya. So he came to see the Buddha and asked, "Can you please help me? I have been meditating, I can train the mind, I can control all the evil forces in my mind. Only problem now I am facing is this. Still I do not know how to guard my mind when there are many objects which disturb my eyes, ears, nose and the body. These things influence the mind and disturb my concentration and calmness of my mind. So can you please advise me what to do?" And the advice that was given by the Buddha is remarkable, very practical. He did not say, when you happen to see certain things which, whether you like or not, the sound, whether you like or not, the smell, whether you like or not, or the taste, anything, the feeling, you should not try to close your eyes or not plug something here in your ears to stop the sound vibration. You cannot guard your mind by doing that. It's not practical, very artificial. In that case, a blind or deaf man can meditate very easily. But I think blind man and deaf man experience more mental disturbance because they like to see things, what we talk about, they have never seen in their life. The anxiety disturbs their mind. So that is not the solution. Don't close your eyes. The Buddha says, when you happen to see something which is whether very fashionable or unpleasant object, look at properly, if possible, through proper perspective. Analyze what it is. After that, don't bring that object into your mind. Keep it there. Drop it there. Because you have done all your duties there. By using your eyes, you have done all your duties through your eyes. Don't bring this into your mind to disturb the mind. And all the other five senses also like this. Now this is a real practical method. The trouble with us, when we happen to see something or somebody, we keep that object in our mind, go on talking for years, very dirty or ugly things or very nice things. But we never think by doing that we bring more burdens, unnecessary burdens into our mind. Always try to avoid from unnecessary burden. We always like to interfere, deal with so many unnecessary things, talk unnecessary things, never support, never help for our mental training or for our education or our religious way of life, no value at all. But we like to talk. Valuable time that we waste and disturbances that we create, unnecessary criticism, blame, accusation, interference. First we disturb our own mind. After that we disturb others' mind. So if we can avoid all these unnecessary things, we can maintain some sort of satisfactory life. These are the things we have to learn from Buddhism. Because Buddhism talk about this mental training, how to train the mind. All the other activities that we perform as religious activities can become a failure if we have not learned how to maintain some sort of happiness, satisfaction, calmness in our mind. Now you perform so many religious activities, functions, ceremonies with good motive, good intention. While you are performing this, you create a lot of misunderstanding, jealousy, enmity, criticism. In the end, you forget the purpose, values of all your religious work. You talk about ill of others. Wasted your valuable time. You must learn how to maintain happiness after doing your work. We have spent so much, we have worked day and night, we use the effort, we can see the good result. Instead, you go on talking about others and how others behave, what others talk and how others criticize, then you disturb, you pollute your own mind. This is the most important lesson you have to learn from Buddhism.
Dhamma does not mean the teachings of the Buddha. And this particular chapter is called Dhamma Anupassana, Dhammanupassana, for our meditation. So Dhamma means natural occurrences that which take place in our mind, and internal and external. This is the real meaning of Dhamma. I think you can remember why the Buddha's doctrine or teaching that we introduce as Dhamma. Because the Buddha never said that he has created anything in this world. He has not created anything and he is not going to destroy anything. So what he did, he has explained the real nature or the causes of all these existing phenomena, or many other things that we regard as life, or elements and energies. How these things exist and why all these things change, we can see very clearly. Anything that which come into existence, after some time changes take place. We cannot stop, no one can stop it. Now that is called Dhamma. There is no external force to create these changes. That very existence is the cause. So changes take place. After changing and changing and changing, we can see how they are going on decaying and decaying and decaying. Now that is Dhamma, it is natural. After decaying and decaying, whatever method we adopt to stop this decaying, by using modern science and technology and various other methods, we try to prolong our life and certain things, preserve certain things by using chemicals. But how long can we do that? We can extend a few more years. But decaying naturally takes place. So after this decaying, then dissolve. Dissolution also natural. It is called Dhamma. After this dissolution or disintegration, disappear. No more. For that, if it is a life, we say death. Then another big problem. What happened to this objects or the life? Appear, existed, disappear. Then what happened? So we create our own imagination and give different interpretation, explanation according to our theories or belief or mythologies. But remember, all these happenings, appearance, changes, decay or disappearance are natural. That is why it is called Dharma. If anything happens after death, it is also natural. Remember this. Because there is no somebody to handle this one, to change. We believe that there is somebody to send us to heaven or send us to hell or to punish us or to reward us. This is our own interpretation. So, then different religions gives different interpretation. So they believe according to their way of thinking, or not for their own satisfaction. Not actually according to their way of thinking, but for their satisfaction. Just to console themselves. Now let us take, when somebody dies, people advertised in the newspaper. So and so passed away to be with the Lord. Very nice, sugar-coated word. Anybody may be a very cruel, wicked man. But we announce, oh, don't worry, he is with the Lord. He is having a happy, nice time with our Lord. How nice. So everybody like it. But this is our own interpretation. But nobody knows where he is. No evidence to prove where he is. To console ourselves. So the Buddha never used this kind of words, sugar-coated words, to console us. So he has revealed actually what happened as natural occurrences. This is the real meaning of Dhamma. Why Buddhism is called Dhamma? So this word Dhamma Anupassana or Dhamma Vichaya Sambojjhanga, investigation. I told you, through your research work or through comparative religious knowledge, you cannot understand the Dhamma. You collect theories. You collect belief and mythologies. Then try to compare. Take one particular religion, then you collect the theories of different schools. If not, we take few religions, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, then we compare. Buddhism says like this, Christianity says like this, Hinduism says like this, Islam says like this. This is called comparative religious knowledge. But investigation of the Dhamma is not this kind of investigation. Without creating our own imagination, without developing the conceptions or the belief that we maintain about life and the world or the nature, we try to investigate, try to find out the nature of existence, as I mentioned just now. Now let us take one of the advices given by the Buddha. How to practice these investigations of the Dhamma. Now you want to know how this life come into existence to be like this without depending on any belief or theories. The advices given by the Buddha we do not regard as belief or theories. The Buddha says he has no theories. Practical way, or we can use the word scientifically or analytically. He defined, analyzed and explained. And no theories or belief. So how this life come into existence? We want to investigate. Simply by developing this belief that God created this one at once. Through our belief we can accept. But investigation does not support that belief. When you investigate unbiasedly, that belief becomes very weak. No solid ground for us to accept. Then we give up that. Then we come back to our religion, say Buddhism. Buddhism says, you are the result of what you were. That means we exist today due to certain good and bad karmas that we have accumulated during our past life. But this interpretation is not absolutely correct. It is not the absolute truth. It is called conventional truth. That means certain karmas are responsible for our existence, for our pleasant and unpleasant experience. It is true. But karma is not solely responsible. There are so many other factors. That is why I told you it is not the absolute truth. Then we analyze. 5 factors are now investigation. So what are the 5 factors that contribute to generate or to produce a life? Because we start from this line. If we go on investigating one after the other, it is an endless work. You never get the final answer. So we go on investigating. When we cannot find the answer, then what we do? We stop our investigation and approach the God. Use the word God. Our God is responsible. Completed our investigation. But there are many intellectuals who cannot satisfy with that. By knowing this situation, the Buddha said, don't waste your time. You cannot find the answer that you are seeking for. By using your inquisitive mind, you observe, you find out something. Let us take Charles Darwin, who discovered theory of evolution. Actually, this is not his own discovery. When you refer to ancient Indian philosophy, more than 2,000 or 3,000 years old Indian philosophy, how they have explained this theory of evolution. So this is not a new discovery, but he found out certain evidences, fossils, elements, only one aspect. By depending on all these things, he made his theory, this evolution, and started this life originated from amoeba in the water. But he cannot give further explanation to tell us how this amoeba was originated at the beginning in the water. He starts from there. So his analysis is not the final analysis. Then he also could not find out anything regarding the mental process. Only elements, the development, changes, evolutions of the elements. How changes have taken place from time to time, why different forms of living beings appear from time to time. He knew there is a link. That is called anthropology. But he does not know anything about the mental process, the definitions of the mind, and how mind can contribute for these changes. He does not know. So without depending on theories, we can satisfy by investigating in this way. Let us take one physical body. Then this is the combinations of mind and matters, nama and rupa. And this is also not a new theory, new discovery. When you refer to many other religions, also you can see. Let us take ancient Chinese philosophy, yang and yin, or yin and yang, nama, rupa, mind and matter, negative, positive. They discovered, they have given the names, that's all. Let us take ancient Indian philosophy before Buddhism come into existence. They have used another name, two names, Prakriti, Purusha. Just like mind and matter. Christianity, of course, analyze something as Trinity, but not directly referring to the same origin of the life. But they too have definition. Only religion directly talk about one particular very dynamic force is Islam. Only one. God, nothing but God. No Father, no Son, no Holy Ghost, no Spirit, nothing. Only God. That's all. Only will. All the other religion depend on something else. Alright, now let us take mind and matter. Mind and matters both are energies. Because matters also energies, we have to analyze. So they have magnetic powers. Both are energies. Two group of energies. Again analyze. Elements into four groups, mind into four groups. Right? You know very well. You have heard more than 100,000 times. Solidity, fluidity, heat, motion. Four elements. Then feeling, perception, mental habit, consciousness. Four groups. Different factors. Again analyze. Otherwise, we cannot understand. As five factors These mind and matter we analyze into 5 groups again. It's called Niyama Dhamma. The factors which generate or contribute to create a fully developed life. What are those 5? Chitta Niyama, Kamma Niyama, Bija Niyama, Dhamma Niyama, Uttu Niyama. 5. It's very scientific. Now this is Dhamma. There must be a mental energy. If there is no mental energy, it is impossible for elements or internal or external energies to create a life. God also cannot create. Then, mental energy. The modern scientists also agree. Mental energy is more responsible than the elements. Albert Einstein has said this. Mental energy must come first. He refuted all the other scientific theories, but introduced this. Because formerly, others believe the mind is the byproduct of the elements. But today nobody believes it. Then, who created this mental energy? Then you can ask. This question is not a meaningful question. For anything we can ask the same question. Who created this? Because you never find the correct answer to this kind of question. We create our own imagination. Universes where a certain living being exists, infinite. There's neither beginning nor an end. Exists forever. Appear and disappear. Certain areas going on, disappearing. Certain areas reappear. This is the nature of the universe. So living being always exists. And there is nobody to create these mental energies. Forever they exist. Within this wheel of samsara, existence. Then, so this mental energy is a link from another mental energy. Now that is one of the factors. Then the karmic factor. In that mental energy, there are some ingredients. Now this karmic energy is one of the ingredients in that mental energy. So now there are 2. Three more are related to the so-called cosmic energies. This word cosmic energy, I think people started to use about 50 to 60 years ago. Earlier people never used this word cosmic energy. In that cosmic energies, there are 3 more factors. Bija, Uttu, Dharma. Germinal order, that is also a kind of energy. Seeds or germs, external cosmic energy. Then Uttu, season or the period or the time. This is another factor. The life cannot appear if these external energies do not support, contribute. Karma or mind cannot create a life. Four. And the last one is called Dhamma. Again, we use the word Dhamma. What is this Dhamma? Here Dhamma means natural phenomena. We cannot explain. Today, many people try to introduce the concept of God by referring to this nature. They say God is nothing but nature. God is a world. All these things exist, that which exist by taking different forms, different colors, designs, and experience good and bad, pleasant or unpleasant feeling, taste, different taste, bitterness, sweetness, or this kind of taste. Then pretty and ugly. These differences, discriminations, take place through the influence of this Dhamma. Dhamma means natural phenomenon. It is unbiased. We cannot influence this Dhamma or nature either by worshipping or praying or offering. Remember this. We are succumbed to this natural phenomenon. When we develop our mental energy, this dynamic force that we develop as mental energy, we can use to overcome, to topple, to change many of these natural occurrences, but not all. So the mental development is the important aspect here. Now let us take another example. Astrologers very clearly explain how these planets influence our life, our physical body. It is true. We cannot deny. How sicknesses or changes take place in our life due to the influence of sun and the moon and certain other planets. Naturally. That is under cosmic energy. But when we develop our mind, we can use this mental energy to topple, the influence or the force used by the planetary system. Atho atthassa nakhattam kinkarisanti taraka. This teachings in Buddhism is a very meaningful saying. The due credit that the Buddha has given to human mind here. If the mind is energetic, if you have developed your mind, if purity prevails in the mind, at that time, Kim karisanti taraka. Taraka means stars. What can those stars can do for you at that time? They become powerless. That means we should not surrender ourselves to such external forces. If we know how to develop our mind, so we go and bow down and worship everywhere for any object. If people say, you can get rid of your sickness, you can get rid of your bad luck, you can get good luck and this and that, you are ready to go and worship any dirty thing in this world. That is called weakness in your mind. Very poor mentality. No willpower, no confidence, no intelligence, surrender to anybody because of this thing. So the Buddha wanted to develop that mind to avoid all these things, advise us even not to surrender these planets also. We say what to do, our bad luck. As Buddhists we say what to do, our karma is like this. Some others say what to do, it's the will of God. All are in the same boat. Never give due credit to human intelligence. So understanding of the Dhamma, see, these are the 5 factors which contribute to mold a life. This is called investigation of the Dhamma. Then, as long as we live, we have to face so many natural problems, as I mentioned earlier. Family problems, unhappiness, very bad atmosphere at home or in the society or in the country, discriminations, sicknesses. We can maintain calmness and patience in our minds if we have concentrated on this Dhamma. All these occurrences are Dharma. The knowledge of the Dhamma is important to face our problems, not to argue, not to glorify, to understand our problems, the nature of our problem, the causes of our problem. Then, how to overcome certain problems, how to avoid certain problems, we can do. If they are natural problems, then we have to face them with courage. This knowledge of the Dhamma really helps us to maintain our human dignity. not to behave as slaves to anybody. Now you can understand the nature of this Dhamma Vichaya, Sambodhanga, investigation of the Dhamma. You can read hundreds and thousands of volumes of Dhamma book. Still, investigation of the Dhamma is not in your mind. Next one, Virya Sambodhanga. Virya means efforts or energy, mentally and physically. We have to use our effort to do certain things, but we have to use more effort not to do many things. You understand? To do certain things is not very difficult, but not to do things is very difficult. This is the problem. Certain evil, harmful or immoral habits or practices, very difficult for us to stop. This is called difficult. To do certain things, yes, we can, but many things we have to force to contribute something, to learn the Dhamma, or to be good. We have to use our full efforts. So we have discovered the shortcut for all these things. Easiest method. What is that? Not necessary to use full efforts or energy. You can go as usual, but believe in God and pray, worship. Enough. Very easy. There's no problem. Anyone can do that. And develop belief, hope. We believe in God. We pray. We worship. We have full confidence. But here, Buddhism says you have to use your full efforts without depending on another person. You can depend, no harm, but there is no guarantee that you can gain. If you use your effort, you can understand you can gain or not. Because through your belief, what you maintain as your hope, only after your death. Therefore, you do not know whether you can gain or not. By using this effort, you can see the result before you die, before your death. Now, which is more practical? Take an example. You have so many habits, weaknesses, immoral practices, harmful to others. So your life is a real nuisance to others. You also admit, yes, it is true, but I cannot change. I am like this. Then what do you do? Then you go and pray and ask the God to change your way of life. That's all. Every day you can pray, asking God to change you. But God cannot change your mind unless you change your mind. But many others can do this without asking the God to change. He can change. That is why the energy, mental energy is important here. Create strong determination in the mind. I am not going to do this anymore under any circumstances. And that energy, later you may come across certain temptations and uneasiness, but when Gandhi wanted to stop a smoke, he used to smoke very expensive cigar at that time when he was young. He wanted to stop. So when he wanted to stop, he did not throw away. He had few cigars. Many others say, I don't want to smoke anymore, throw away. If I happen to see, because I get the temptation, therefore I don't want to keep. What he did, he kept the cigars on his table. Every day he looked at. All right, do you think you can tempt me? I don't think. You better try and see whether you can change my mind. I am not going to smoke. See how far he has developed his mental energy. After that, no one can create that temptation in the mind. If not, some people say, I don't like to see. If I happen to see, because I want to smoke. So that is called weakness in the mind, no energy. So we can, if we use our full effort. So when we developed our mental energy, the same energy we divert through our physical body. Then use physical and mental energy for good purpose. To serve others, to support others. When you use this mental energy to serve others, we also serve ourselves. Remember, we cannot serve ourselves without serving others. To serve others, we have to reduce selfishness. So when selfishness is reduced, we serve ourselves. So the virya or the effort, energy that we develop mentally and physically is one of the factors for the purity or the enlightenment. The next one, Piti Sambojjhanga. Now what is this happiness? Remember the difference. The happiness that the Buddha discussed here and the happiness that we maintain in our mind. Two different things, not the same. Many things that we regard as happiness, in the end, create unhappiness. This is not that type of happiness. This happiness never creates unhappiness, disappointment or frustration. So whatever you gain, that you are longing, waiting, praying, working, after gaining, you experience some sort of emotional satisfaction. For that, you say happiness. It is not happiness. Take for instance, your children. When you see how lovely they are, how obedient they are, you think you experience happiness. It is not happiness. That is emotional satisfaction. They entertain your satisfaction, emotion. The same happiness that you introduce, turn the other way around. When your children become very notorious and ungrateful and cruel, dangerous people, your happiness is no. Then you hate, you chase them away. Then where is happiness? So we cannot regard this as happiness. Right. Your love towards your wife or your husband, you regard as happiness. It is not happiness. That is also another kind of emotional satisfaction. Entertain your emotion. But little bit of misunderstanding, disturbances take place, you become enemies. Then hate, then beat or kill. Then what happens to happiness? Here, happiness means, there is another word, also we abuse the real meaning of that word also. Bliss. Bliss is not happiness. Bliss means soothing feeling, very soothing to our mind. The happiness that we discussed earlier is not soothing, entertaining and console our attachment, our craving, our desire, console. So it is not happiness. People enjoy music. At that time they experience happiness. It is not happiness. They experience more excitement with emotion. That is why when music is going on, their head also going on like this, emotion. If not legs going on like this. Follow the rhythm. Emotion. But after some times, after listening and listening and listening, the same music, after that we say, I hate this music. Because we got fed up with that. Now this is the nature of our happiness that we introduce. The happiness that we discuss here calm our mind, reduce the tension, fear, anger, evil forces from the mind, and develop peace, calmness, bliss. To do that, we have to reduce so many things from the mind. The more we reduce our burdens, our responsibilities, the more the mind can relax. Now you have so much attachment towards your family, your property, your money and your names and publicity. But on the other hand, same things create enormous problem. Disappointment, fear, then create jealousy, anger, enemies, and create suspicion. Then where is happiness? Therefore all these things that we are craving for or regard as happiness experience reverse effect, bad effect. Never get complete satisfaction in our life. The happiness we experience more. I remember the saints of Gandhi. He's a great man. He says, fewer the needs,